Alrighty, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar on Autonomic products. In particular, we'll be talking about how to integrate with Control4 systems. I'm Ricky Pishoff, and I'm the National Technical Training Manager at SnapAV, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we get started, let's go through a few quick housekeeping items. First, we will be recording the presentation, and we'll send you a copy by email within the next few days. There'll be a link in that email. For attending the webinar, in that email will be a coupon code for a special offer for Autonomic products. The details of that offer will be included in the email. And lastly, we are planning to have time at the end of the presentation for a Q&A session. So please feel free to send in your questions at any time during the webinar. You can do that by using the question and answer feature in the webinar control panel. Okay, now I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Christian Para. He's the lead support for Autonomics in New York, and I will pass this over to Christian. Stand by and I'll turn him on. Hello, Christian, you there?
Yeah, Ricky, thank you.
All right, I'll go ahead and pass it on to you, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you, Ricky. Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Para. I am a QA tester, and I do technical support for Autonomic, a SnapAV company. So for today's agenda, in the training seminar, we'll be going over a review of the Autonomic Audio System and Control4 compatibility. From there, we'll move on to the setup and configuration of the system. And then finally, we'll cover some frequently asked questions. The Autonomic Control4 driver allows the integration of the Autonomic music servers and Autonomic amplifiers in a Control4 environment. Some of the key features of the Control4 interface are complete access to all your configured streaming services, local content, playlists, and favorites. You also get full control of Autonomic's TuneBridge cross-platform search feature. You also have the ability to control multiple servers all through one interface. Some of the feature sets of the media servers are the support of high-res audio, internal storage for local content that transfers via our sync software, expandable storage capabilities, various embedded streaming services, our cross-platform search feature known as TuneBridge, and remote management through Oversee or Dealer Zone. On our amplifiers, we deliver continuous high-powered 100 watts per zone, 8 to 4 ohm stable, up to 12 local source inputs, support up to 32 eAudioCast streams, internal DACs that produce clear audio at 2496K. You can also adjust bass, treble, balance, and loudness. It's expandable up to 96 zones, complete IP control, zone linking capabilities, connections for the KP6 keypads on every single zone, and it occupies a 2 RU rack space. Our Control4 driver is compatible with the MMS5A, MMS2A, MMS1E, and all of our E-Series amplifiers. The MMS5A can support up to 5 individual streams. With a USB DAC, you can support up to 6 individual streams. The 2A is 2 individual streams, and as well with a USB DAC, it can go up to 3 individual streams. The MMS1E is a single streamer. If it's paired up with one of our E-Series amplifiers, you will get 2 streams. The equipment we will be using in today's training session will be an MMS2A media server, an M801E amplifier, the HC800 Control4 processor, and our programming will be done on Composer version 2.9.1. And our panel will be the Control4 app for PC and Mac, which is version 2.9.1 as well. It is always recommended that you use the latest version of Composer and Navigator to ensure functionality. It is also important to note that the driver is not limited to this system. Our driver is compatible with all current Control4 processors. To begin, let's cover some basic vocabulary that we will be using in this training session. MCP is the central driver. It pretty much marries all the drivers together. According to the server, the MCP driver is an autonomic amplifier. This lets us communicate with other Control4 compatible amplifiers. The instance driver represents and controls a single output on the MMS. One driver is needed per output on the MMS. As you can see, there's two different types of instances. There's an A-series instance for the 5A and 2A, and we have our E-series instance for the MMS 1E. We'll be able to see these instances in Composer. The favorites driver will display and grant access to all saved favorites on the MMS. These favorites can be linked to a script action in Control4, which we will go over for a bit towards the end of the seminar. Service drivers are the drivers for all the embedded streaming services that are offered by the MMS. And our AMP driver will give the user control over power, volume, source selection, and zone selection for any of the autonomic amplifiers. Since the MCP driver is our conductor, let's go over the actions it offers. Configure MMS will inform the MCP server of all available outputs based off the program configuration. The refresh driver state action will force a request of all available service drivers. Update rooms will send out a request for a list of autonomic services for each room in the project. It is crucial that this button be pressed after the addition or removal of a room and after completing the initial setup. Okay, before opening Composer, be sure your server is on the appropriate firmware. The MMS 5A and MMS 2A servers need to be on any version of firmware 5.35 or greater. For the MMS 1E, you need a minimum firmware of 6.0.2017.0509.0. Now that we have discussed the compatibility and background of the Autonomic Control4 driver, we will move on to the live configuration. The latest drivers can be found on the Autonomic or Snap AV website. After downloading them, be sure to add them to the Control4 drivers archive on your computer. Bear with me while I switch over to Composer. To begin, select the system view and let's add the amplifier driver. You can find all of our drivers by going to the items box and selecting the search tab. Be sure to uncheck online to ensure you are using the recently downloaded drivers. So we'll select the system design, and then we'll go to search and add Autonomic. Press enter. Now we'll look for the M801E driver. Here it is. Double click it and it will be added to my program. Next, we're going to select this connection view and set the endpoints to your zones. The endpoints you could think of are pretty much the rooms you've created in your C4 program. And the zones, well obviously those are the zones on our amplifiers. So if we're using the M801E, so we have 8 zones. So we go to the connection view and select the M801E. We scroll down to the very bottom to where it says Output 1 Audio Endpoint. Select that. I'm going to bind it to my living. It's supposed to be living room, but we'll connect it to Audio Endpoint 1. And you also have to do this to audio volume. For our second zone, I have a theater zone. Same thing, bind it to audio endpoint 1 and audio volume 1. At this point, we could go back to the system design view and enter the IP address of the M801E. We're going to hit set once we've entered it, and then we're going to wait for the status field to let us know that it's found the amplifier. Amplifier found OK. So we're ready to move on to the next set of drivers, which will be the MCP drivers, instance drivers, and the service drivers. So we'll start by adding the MCP driver. System design, and since we're using a two-way, we're going to use MCP for Mirage Media Server 2, which is this one. See the 2 at the end, and it says MMS2. Double-click it. Now it's been added to your program. Next, we're going to select the instances. Be sure you do not select the E-Series instance. We are using an A server, so we need to use the A-Series instance. We're going to add two, one for the main coax digital connection and a second for player A, the analog connection. Okay, we're going to go back to MCP and enter the IP address of our server. And then hit set. Once the status changes to connection OK, that means the C4 system has discovered our server. At this point, we could add the rest of our service drivers. For this example, we're only going to use iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and the favorites driver. iHeartRadio. Next is our favorites. Now, while we're still in the system's design view, we're going to go to the instances and set them to their appropriate output. The first instance I was going to set to the digital coax, which is main. Click the drop-down menu, click main, and click set. On the second instance, I'm going to set it to player A. Set. For the next step, we have to go to the connections view, and we have to bind our instances to the M801E. Pretty much we're telling C4 how our MMS is being connected to the amplifier. What output on the MMS is going into what input on the amplifier. So we're going to use AMP1, input 1. On the left side, you're going to see these icons. One represents digital coax and the other one analog. Since main is digital, we're going to use the first one. We're going to drag it into the first instance. And now there's a connection. Now AMP1, input 2, analog icon, drag it a second. And now our instances are bound to the amplifier. We're near the finish line. So next, we're going to go back to the system design view, and we're going to select the MCP driver. And we're going to click on the Actions tab. So system design, MCP, and Actions. Here are the three buttons I discussed earlier. So we're going to start off with Update Rooms. And when you click Update Rooms, right now in the bottom left corner, you can see Director Status Idle. When you hit Update Rooms, in a few seconds, you're going to see Getting AV Devices. We have to wait for this to clear out and go back to idle. And we can continue pressing the other buttons. Back on idle, refresh driver state, and then configure MMS. All right, let's give my system a few seconds for it to configure, and I'll pull up my navigator panel. Okay, so here's the interface. This is the living room. You're going to select Listen. From here, you'll be able to see all the service drivers you added. They're being displayed natively. So we're going to start with TuneIn. Select TuneIn, local radio, FM, and we'll listen to some jazz. Now let's go back and see iHeartRadio. Listen, iHeartRadio. No accounts found. As mentioned earlier, all account credentials need to be entered on the config page of the server. Once you've entered all your account's credentials, and say, for example, say you have more than 2 accounts for iHeartRadio, you hit the Accounts tab, and then swap between accounts. Now, onto some frequently asked questions. One of the biggest questions we're always asked is how to resolve the spinning wheel of death after selecting a streaming service. This usually means the MMS is missing the zones table. Reboot the server so a new connection can be established, and a request for the zones table will be sent again. Another big issue is when you select service, you get nothing. No spinning wheel, no options, just a blank menu options. Usually, this is a typical issue of an outdated service driver. Usually, you just call in tech support and we'll give you the latest drivers, and we'll also let you know what is the latest driver version. A next frequently asked question is recalling a favorite to 1 or more rooms using a C4 keypad. I'm going to have to bring up Composer, so bear with me for 1 second. Okay, in the programming view, select a room from the device events window. So you click on programming, the device events window is right here to the left top corner. I'm going to select living. From here, I'll select commands. So I'm choosing a command off my C4 remote. And from there, I choose whatever button I want. Let's say button 4. So now, whenever I press button 4, here will be the rest of the command. So right now it's a blank command. So go back to the top right corner window called Device Actions and select Living Rooms and then select Media. This will bring up a pop-up window. Browse for media. If you have any favorites saved, you'll be able to see them on broadcast audio. If you do not have any favorites, you will see nothing. So be sure you save your favorites on the MMS first before you do this. I have Beethoven as my favorite, so I'll select that. Okay, and here the command has been generated. All I need to do is click on it and drag it, and now it's ready to be used. If you need to test it, you can hit the execute, and it should turn on the zone, and it should be playing Beethoven. Now, say you want this favorite to fire off in more than 1 room. Say you want Beethoven to also be heard in the theater room besides the living room. What you're going to do is you're going to go back to Device Actions. You're going to scroll down to Theater Room. Then you're going to go to Room Variables for the theater, and you're going to select Current Selected Device. So the theater room, when it's current selected device, we need it to be the same value of the living room. So we're going to select Set Value Of. From there, click the drop down. We're going to select the original room, living room, and with the parameters, current selected device. And there it is. Your command's generated. All you need to do is just click it and drag it. And there. Now you have 2 rooms that'll listen to that favorite. You could repeat these same steps to add a 3rd or 4th room or as many rooms as you want. Now, another frequently asked question is isolating an output to a specific room. This is for scenarios, say if you have an audio room and you just want to listen to the digital coax in that audio room. Through C4, you're able to control that, and you'll be able to only listen to the main digital coax and not player A. To do that, we'll have to go back to the Composer, the System Design view, and then you go to the living room. From living room, you'll go to the Properties window and select Navigator. Once in Navigator, in the menu settings, go to Experience menus and select Listen. And to the right of that, the right of device visibility and display order, select Modify. Now, I know that instance 2 is player A, so if I hide that, this room will not see player A, and it will only use main. Now, I'm not done there just yet. If we're completely trying to isolate the coax connection, now we have to hide that coax instance from every room. So let's go to Listen, Modify, and the coax instance was the first one. And you would do this for every room. If not, all the other rooms will have access to that instance. And once you finalize your customization, be sure to go through all the MCP actions, starting from update rooms and work your way up.
Thanks, Christian. This is Matt Camp, everybody. It was a great demonstration. There's a lot of questions, it seems like, from Spotify users. Christian, would it be possible for you to add the Spotify driver into the composer and log in and show everybody the interface through Control4? Is that possible? Can we do that? It seems like we have quite a bit of extra time.
Yes, just give me a minute. Just bear with me 1 minute. Okay, just give me 1 second. For some reason, it seems like having a bit of network issues. 1 second, please. Okay, I'm back up. Sorry about that. Search Autonomic. And Spotify. Okay. And we go back to the MCP. Actions. Update rooms. Wait for the idle status. Then we'll hit refresh driver state and then configure the MMS. Since we've made changes, it would be recommended that we not only refresh the program, but also refresh the navigators. Because if not, the panels are still gonna have the old program saved to it. And you won't see the Spotify driver. Okay, Navigator has loaded up. We're back in the living room. Listen, and here is Spotify. I think I still need to add my credentials to it. 1 second. One second, let me go to my server. All right, just added my credentials. Save changes. More than likely you're going to have to reboot since we've made some changes on the server side. So the C4 system is not going to be aware of these changes. So it's highly recommended that we reboot the server just to reestablish a new connection between the C4 system and the MMS system. So bear with me as my MMS reboots.
And hey, Christian, it may also be worth mentioning for everybody as well that in order for Spotify to work with the Mirage Media servers, you have to have Spotify Premium. That just this free Spotify account will not work with the Mirage Media Server. So if you're using or advising your clients to use Spotify through Control4 with Autonomic, they will have to have the premium account to do so.
And also a friendly tip, when you're configuring the Spotify account on the MMS, you are not using your email account or your Facebook email. You're going to log into Spotify. Once you log into Spotify, the first screen that populates will show you your account name. That's the username you're going to want to use with the config page. And you're going to use the same password that you use to log into Spotify. I'm just going to refresh the navigator just to be sure that it understands that C4 or it understands the MMS restarted as well. Okay, so back in the living room, listen, Spotify. And there we go. Just took some time. It takes some time to establish a connection or the initial connection. So from here, you'll be able to search your content. Don't judge me. Bit of a Beyonce fan. There we go. A few seconds, we'll start playing. There we go. Beyonce is playing on player A.
That was great, Christian. Thank you. Ricky, I don't know if at this point we want to turn it over to some questions. It looked like there's a handful of questions being answered. I think that concludes Christian's demonstration of the C4 setup.
Well, go ahead, Matt. It looks like there's a few questions there. Why don't you go ahead and address them with Christian since you're side by side with him instead of me trying to interject long distance. So go ahead and go through your questions with him if you don't mind.
Sure. There's a question in here around the 1E setup. So Christian, if you could maybe just explain or demonstrate how the E-Series servers differ in setup than the A-Series. I believe it's just the difference in the driver, whether you're choosing the A-Series or the E-Series, but maybe you can just highlight that again.
There's three major things. The MCP driver that you're going to want to use is obviously the 1E version. So right now I'm using the 2A. So we would use the 1E, which is MCP1, which is right up. No, that's music. MCP1. And then if you're using an eAudiocast amplifier or E-Series amplifier, you're going to want to use two E-Series instances, one for player A and for player B. So, and also you have to change the stack ID on the E-Series amp. So it's three major things. You have to use the 1E MCP, the E-Series instances, and then change the stack ID on the amplifier. The stack ID for the amplifier, I'll pull it up right now so you can see what it looks like. So you could leave the MMS on stack ID 1 or 2. Just be sure that you set your amplifier to a different stack ID. So if the 1E is on stack ID 2, you'll set this one to 183 or whatever number that is not the number 2. And that's pretty much it.
Great, thank you. Looks like there's a question about internal storage for local content. I'll take this one. Again, I'm not sure if I properly introduced myself. My name is Matt Camp. I'm the product director for audio at Snap AV, and that's inclusive of Autonomic, speakers, and amplifiers. So thank you, everybody, for attending the webinar today. In terms of the local storage content for the servers, each of the servers has local storage on board. The 1E has a 32 gig SSD. The 2A has a 128 gigabyte SSD, and the 5A has a 1 terabyte hard drive, spinning media hard drive. And basically, with the media synchronization software, you're able to take your local content from any other device on the network and synchronize that content locally to the media server. So even if those devices fall off the network, you're able to play that content that was on those devices locally from the Mirage Media Server and play those in queue with any of the other streaming services as well. So if you have a particular song that you want to play next in queue that's local, in line with something from another service, that's totally acceptable. So that's what the local content is for.
Also, just to add on, you're not limited to the storage capacity. All of our servers are expandable using an external hard drive.
So there's another question here, Christian, and maybe this one you can address. Will all of this integration work with the M800 version amps, and how does it differ?
It's actually the same thing. Nothing changes.
Great.
We use the because 800
Yep, so the 800 was replaced by the 801E, and so all of these drivers and all these processes and steps that Christian just went through would be the same across the M400, M800, M801E, M401E, as well as the M120E. So all of the autonomic amplifiers that we have today, as well as the legacy models and the 400 and the 800, would all work the same way. Let's see here. What else? There was a question here around sometimes the favorites take a while to show up. Is there any explanation for why that is?
It depends. If you have a favorite that has about 1,000 tracks, the server is going to take some time to populate all that information. Usually after it's cached the first attempt, it should start populating much quicker. So meaning on the second and third event, or third time you hit the favorites, it should populate.
Okay, excellent. There is also a question here around entering the credentials for the streaming for the streamers themselves. The question is, so you can't enter the credentials via Control4, and I think like Christian demonstrated, and maybe you can explain a little bit further, but all of the credential entry actually happens on the Mirage Media Server local web UI for each of the respective streaming services that are being used. So maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Correct. Unfortunately, there is too much technical background to be able to allow you to do it via the Control4 system, and also it may cause a lot of errors, why the developers weren't able to implement that. So the only workaround is to just go to the config page, set up your streaming services, and then jump on Control4. And typically, usually, you set up your MMS first with the amplifier and your streaming services, and then you're jumping onto Control4 since you need everything online and on the network.
Excellent. Thank you for that explanation as well. There is a question around what is the difference between centralized and distributed drivers for the amps. I'm not sure exactly if that question is referring to the difference between the E-Series amplifiers versus the...
That's pretty much what it is. It's one is E-Series version, and the other one is the M800 M400.
Okay. So what you're saying is that the decentralized versions of the drivers are backwards compatible with the old M800, but the old centralized drivers in the M800 and M400 are not compatible with the
Correct.
new M401E and 801E.
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you. There is a question here around iTunes, or I think what you're referring to is TuneBridge. So maybe we can get a little bit of an explanation on the TuneBridge portion of it. I don't know, Christian, if that's something that you want to take?
Yes. Just let me try to bring up TuneBridge. So TuneBridge, pretty much right now we're listening to Beyonce on Spotify. Now, obviously, streaming services offers the same song in different bit rates, different quality. It may even sound completely different to the user. So what we offer is a cross-platform search. So you're able to list whatever you're listening in Spotify. Unfortunately, I don't have any of my other accounts set up, but if I had my title account and everything set up, it'd let me search for this artist, Beyonce, or this track, Halo, on Tidal, without having to go into the Tidal streaming service itself, or Driver.
So TuneBridge is basically some...
you could think of it as a shortcut search.
Okay. Excellent. Anything you want to add?
Hi, this is Jennifer Lavalito, Product Marketing Manager. Just to expand on TuneBridge, we do like to consider it like a music discovery and exploration tool. It is all dependent on what's now playing. So to Christian's point, although we're playing content back from Spotify right now, it could be anything coming from an AirPlay stream or your local content or any of the other streaming services. And again, it's like a shortcut search into any other streaming service without having to disrupt playback on what you're currently now playing.
Excellent. Let's see here. There's a question about Oversee and what support Oversee can provide for Autonomic. Today, the 1E is Oversee enabled. We are in the process of Oversee enabling all of the amplifiers, so the 120E, 401E, and 801E. As well as some next generation servers that we're developing as well will all be Oversee enabled. So with Oversee enablement of all these products, you'll be able to obviously see the status of the device online. You'll be able to access the local UI of the devices straight from Oversee. You'll be able to get be able to perform firmware updates on Oversee as well, as opposed to having to do any sophisticated tunneling or anything like that. Let's see what else. Yeah, the other thing within the servers UI for Oversee, you'll be able to see all of the active services as well as all of the storage, the local storage that we talked about earlier. You'll be able to see how much of that storage is being consumed by local content. So a lot of really good features that are currently enabled on the 1E and will be enabled in the future on the other products as well. So let's see what's next. There's a couple questions around MQA encoding. I don't know if that's a question that we can address.
We are aware of MQA. We do understand it's a hardware change in order to support MQA, but it is on our radar, and we do have plans to support it down the road. What time frame on that, I'm not too sure at this time, but we are aware. We've been having business development discussions around it, and it is something we plan to support.
Excellent. Maybe you can also comment on Apple Music as well.
Sure. The same kind of applies with Apple Music. We are having extensive business development discussions with Apple Music, and it is something we will be supporting. Time frame is kind of up in the air right now. I believe they are planning on introducing something similar to what Spotify has as far as their Spotify Connect, and they will be allowing us to do a similar type of integration. To touch on Spotify Connect, because I know that's a question that's out there as far as some of the other servers and what Spotify is allowing other people to integrate at this point. We will be adding Spotify Connect support. This will not take away the embedded search functionality that currently exists and that you saw today within our server and Control4 integration. But it will be another way for your clients to listen to music directly from the Spotify app.
Awesome. And along the lines of Apple, it looks like there's a question around whether or not the Mirage app will work with the new iOS 11 being released in September. And so I believe it will, but we can definitely confirm that and get an answer to you on that one as well. Let's see, running through the list here. I apologize if I'm missing anybody's questions. I'm trying to get them all here. Let's see. There was a continuation question on Oversee. So if a client wants to add a new streaming service, we can configure it remotely through Oversee. So again, all the streaming services are added, all the credentials for the streaming services are added on the server's local UI. So you'll be able to access the server's local UI through Oversee and add the credentials directly on the device itself. So that's how you would do the additional credentials through Oversee for that. I think that pretty much addresses most, if not all, of the questions that have been submitted for the webinar today. So if there are no other last-minute questions, then I want to thank Christian for taking us through the demonstration today. And again, if there are any questions that unfortunately we didn't get an answer to today, we will be sure to address those questions and get back to you as quickly as possible. It was not intentional that we missed any. Ricky, I'm not sure if there's anything else that you want to add, but again, thanks for Christian walking us through that. If there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, Christian, or Jen with any questions, and we look forward to you guys giving some feedback for us.
All right, thanks a lot, Matt. Matt, Christian, and Jennifer, we really appreciate you guys taking the time and putting this presentation together. I know our Control4 dealers got a lot out of this, and as always, Christian's in support. So if you running into some Control4 issues, please feel free to call in the support and get those answers to your questions. Please look for a follow-up email from us that will include a special coupon offer. It'll be outlined what that offer is in the email, and also a link to the recording session. It may take up to 2 to 4 days to get this email out to you. We have to process the video and get the link posted. So give us a few days. If you don't get a response, you can email webinars@snapav.com. We'll be happy to make sure that you were taken care of. Also, please take a moment to fill out the brief survey when you exit the webinar to let us know what you thought of today's presentation and what other webinar topics you're interested in. Again, on behalf of Autonomic team and SnapAV guys, we thank you for taking time to join us. Have a great day and happy installing.